All right, so to discuss the Seattle Seahawks, obviously Jack just kind of gave away his division prediction. Um, I mean, there's a lot to like about them, right? Russell Wilson, I think, who, people were shocked about 0 MVP votes. I think I was shocked a little bit, but at the same time, I recognize that during his years of greatness, there have just been other stories that have just taken off. And I see a lot of parallels to Drew Brees. Same thing, consistent greatness, but there have just been quarterbacks with better stories at times. So, I'm not surprised a little bit by it's a bit of both, but obviously he's a top 2 quarterback. I think everyone can agree on that. Those who have Lamar over him, you're delusional. So Russell Wilson is a very, very good quarterback. And I think that is why Seattle Seahawks have not had a losing season when he is under center. You can say the questions about the O-line, but it's like he's made it work with damn near everybody. I mean, he lost Max Unger and everyone thought, okay, that was a weird trade, but he picks it right back up. I mean, J.R. Sweezy, that's the type of guys he's working with. George Fant? I mean, the dude couldn't block to save his life. So, Russell Wilson finds ways to make plays with his legs, with his arm. I mean, you guys saw that throw to Lockett, right?
And the Rams.
AWS literally named it like a 0.4% chance of getting completed. And it was crazy. I mean, only he can make that throw. So he's just Russell Wilson. I know I'm kind of digressing here, but he's a great quarterback. And I think that's why I got Seattle, obviously going back to the postseason. And again, like the Niners have a favorable schedule, so do they, because they play mainly the same teams. They obviously play the AFC East as well as the NFC East. But, there's a factor here that people don't actually recognize. So Seattle was second in the division, correct? And how the scheduling works is you play a team you play the full division in the NFC, right? So for example, it's the NFC East for the NFC West. They will play everyone in the NFC East, but each team will play, right, in the other 2 divisions, the team that finished at the same standing as them. So Seattle will play the second best team from the NFC North, and they will play the second best team from the NFC South. I think that is very very underrated fact about the scheduling system. It's because since they were so good last year, but they finished second, they actually don't have to play the division winners that the Niners do. So the Niners have to play the Saints, Seattle doesn't, right? That's like a big highlight there. The Niners have to play the Packers, Seattle doesn't. So I think that's another factor that people don't address. There's another one too. Seattle has the worst traveling schedule. I think that's also a bit concerning. But other than that, I really don't anticipate them being too big of a factor. While they play a bit of easier teams, while they also have a little bit of travel thing, I still think they get it done. I think they go 11-5 again. I think they win some games that, you go, wow, okay, they're really going crazy. But also I think they lose some games that they should have won. For example, I think they lose to Arizona at home. I think that's one potential upset I see. I see the Rams beating them at home off a bye. But I think it all comes down, before you guys go, I think it all comes down to this Week 17 game, right? And usually we haven't seen this Week 17 game being as anticipated as we did last year. But, this is where it comes down to. This is what it'll go for. And I think the problem is with Seattle, it's just I think the Niners have a formula that can really work against the Seattle team, especially with the D-line. And we saw what the wide receiver core did to their secondary last time they played. They were going crazy over the middle of the field, yards after the catch. So that's why I have the Niners doing it again. And I think it's great because the second game is at their home turf. I think if it was Week 17 in Seattle, I think it's a different story. But really, I think despite the fans, despite whatever happens, I think it's just a different vibe there in Levi's, and I think that's why I got the Niners taking the division. But Seattle 11-5, don't sleep on them.
I think Anish really hit it on the nail with the offense, but I kind of wanted to focus on the defense, more specifically the offseason trade for Jamal Adams. And before going any further, I should say this is common knowledge, but this unit isn't anywhere close to as commanding as the Legion of Boom. I'm talking about the secondary. Just reflecting, that defense featured 2 future Hall of Fame defensive backs in Richard Sherman and Earl Thomas. And Cam Chancellor, that dude was basically a linebacker in a safety's body. He was absolutely insane.
Watch his highlight. It's insane, the hits that he was able to
He's
do.
Scary.
He's just an incredible player. He could strike fear in anyone. I remember watching the hit.
For sure. I think that's.
I remember watching that hit against Vernon Davis. You replaying it that dude is just vicious. Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, I think Seattle's secondary, it should become a point of strength for a defense that's otherwise very on the fence for me. And last season, Adams had an incredible year. He's, in my opinion, the best safety in the NFL. I think Jack would disagree with that because of his saltiness over the Jets trading him and him wanting out. But he is the best safety in the NFL. He turns that Seahawks secondary. Previously, we thought it was pretty mediocre. And now potentially a top 10 unit. I'd say they're top 15. I think just that safety duo of Adams and Diggs, that sits near the top of the NFL. You look at all the great safety duos, Anthony Harris and Harrison Smith is the best safety duo by far, in my opinion. You got Kareem Jackson and Justin Simmons, Matthew and Thornhill, Hyde and Poyer, as before mentioned, Adams and Diggs. And you got Marquise Blair providing depth, I'm pretty sure. The Seahawks don't have any concerns at safety, but I think where I'm most concerned is 1, the pass rush, 2, cornerback. Because corner, it could still give Seattle some difficulty this offseason. I mean, Shaquille Griffin, he had a great year last year. He made the Pro Bowl, career year. But look, offenses would always target Trey Flowers, and Trey Flowers was always exploited. I'd always see him throwing to that side. And, of course, the Seahawks traded for Quentin Dunbar, who they hoped could push Flowers or potentially start alongside Griffin. But we all know what happened with Quentin Dunbar. If you don't know, then I guess just look it up. We won't go into it. But I think the Seahawks are going to have to start Flowers opposite of Griffin again. That's the point. I don't like Trey Flowers at all starting alongside Griffin. But I think the team just still believes in him, that he can still turn his career around. But he cannot play like he did last year if Seattle wants to be an elite secondary. They're still good, but it's so many questions. And then with the pass rush, you lose Clowney. It's just and look, you don't a good pass rush is so beneficial to your secondary. So that's why I really wanted the Seahawks to bring in someone like Everson Griffin, who had ties to Pete Carroll, or you could just bring back Jadeveon Clowney. He's still there. There's still time. I still think you can make a move, but it's just tough because you always a good pass rush is so valuable now. I mean, just look at the Niners. We talked about them before. That pass rush helped the secondary so much. You don't have to cover as long. It's just as simple as that. So there are some questions.
So how big do you think this would have been an effect on their overall defense? Do you think it's going to be critical? Because Seattle defense was pretty good last year. I think
it's not critical. It's not critical, but it's questionable, I'd say. I think the defense as a whole is still pretty questionable, but I think bringing Adams into the fold, you got Bobby Wagner, who's the best middle linebacker in the league. Still not ready to give that to Warner as a Niner fan. I'll still say Wagner. I'll give it up to him.
It's not close, dude.
I wouldn't even argue Warner, but I think it's just I have to see this defense play before going as far as calling them elite, going as far as calling them a contending defense. But overall, I think their offense, of course, I think they're just going to be back in action. I don't think Seattle's going 11-5 in my predictions. So you don't have that losing season. Has Russell Wilson? He's never had a losing season, has he?
He won't ever have a losing season.
That's insane.
Okay, that's a bit too bold. Not that far, but won't go that far.
Looking too far into the future. Looking too far into the future, my friend. But still, I think 11-5. It's, as Anish said, it's going to come down to week 17. And as a Niner fan, you love seeing us being competitive with Seattle finally, because Seattle's just absolutely owned us the past decade. So it's really great to see as a Niner fan. But overall, I think the Seahawks are a solid team. I'm not going to underrate them. I'm not going to overrate them.
Yeah, like you said, I think that Seattle does have problems in the secondary. They've got problems with pass rush. And I think that's why they brought in Adams, because when used correctly, like Greg Williams did last year in New York, Jamal Adams can play corner. He can play edge rusher. He can fix those problems if you use him correctly. And I really hope Seattle has a plan in place to be able to do that and to be versatile with him and to use him like he should be used. And if so, I think that you can fix some of those problems. And like you said, they won't be critical when you've got a guy like Adams to pick up the slack. But I mean, right after the trade was made, you see people on Instagram and Twitter saying that the Seattle defense is elite. They are not elite.
I'm not ready for that yet. I'm not ready.
They're not close to elite. They've got 2 elite players and a lot of other question marks, and especially in pass rush, which is the most important part of a defense. I mean, they've really got nobody.
Lackluster.
Nobody. So the problem is Russell Wilson will get it done. I believe Pete Carroll, right now, I'm going to say is the best coach in this division. I still got him over Shanahan for now. And we know what we're going to get from that offense, especially with healthy running backs, with Chris Carson getting another year, DK Metcalf getting another year. I think we know what we're going to get from this offense, and the defense, I think they got better. And if they have a plan in place, like I believe they do for Adams, this team is scary good. The only problem I have is I'm not completely confident that that's the case. I don't know if they have a plan in place to use Adams correctly, but if they do, I think he can fix a lot of the parts of their defense.
But you still have him winning the division?
I do still have him winning the division. I believe that they will use him correctly, but if they don't, I probably wouldn't have him winning the division. But I think that, I mean, he's that kind of player. As a safety, he can still win you games. He can still put you in position.
Okay.
So
before the Adams trade, did you have Seattle winning the division?
No,
Well, Jack, let me throw this at you because I think this might actually, I wouldn't say convince you enough, but I think this is something that people also should know. Look, Seattle last year, they went 11-5, right? 12 games were decided by 8 or fewer points. So they were 12 one
that's
possession.
The style of football that they play.
10-2. I mean, that is almost unheard of, though. In the NFL, 10-2 in one possession games. I mean, I still have them going 11-5, but 10-2 is damn near impossible to repeat. And I know they're going to be down in those situations again. I mean, you barely beat Cincinnati, who goes 2-14 by 1, right? There are just some of those games where it's like, okay, what's going on here? I mean, like, it really came down to the wire for some of them. Some of the wins, the losses they had, obviously Baltimore, I thought was very convincing. Green Bay, I mean, you let Devontae Adams go for 160-2. Oh my God. I mean, like, but, what do you think about that? I mean, 12 one-possession games, I think there's going to be a lot of those, and I don't think Seattle goes 10-2 again.
I think that just shows you this type of football they play. That's their style. They like to ground and pound the ball early in games, and if needed, put the ball in Russell Wilson's hands to win the game, and he does that. They're not a barn burner team. They haven't been, and I don't think they will be, but they have the pieces in place to wear you down throughout the game and go win a game on a last drive if they need to. Mm-hmm. It's just the style of football they play, and I think they'll continue to play that. Like I said, if they use Jamal Adams correctly, I think they win the division. If not, I think it goes to the Niners. Before the trade, I was on the fence leaning towards San Francisco. After the trade, I picked Seattle, and I think that a lot of people had the Niners, but I'm gonna stick with Seattle because as much as I would love it if they went like 5-11 or something like that, give the Jets a better pick, but 13-3, not exactly what I wanted. But I will not be rooting for them, but I will be predicting them to win the division.